Welcome, everyone. My name is Christina Knobloch with the Napa County Farm Bureau. We're just getting started here today, so we will just give one moment to see if we have some extra people joining us today, and then we'll get started with Tim. Thank you so much for your patience. Well, it looks like a great turnout today. Thank you so much for being here. We are so happy to have you here. Welcome, Farm Bureau members, to the monthly membership seminar. We appreciate your membership and hope to provide value to your daily business activities. For any questions on your membership or benefits associated with your membership, please reach out to myself and we are happy to help here at the office. Today, we are proud to present Beyond Estate Planning, Securing the Future of Your Farm and Ranch. This seminar will be hosted by Tim Cole, Senior Consultant, Nationwide Retirement Institute Partnership Management. We are excited to learn more, and without further ado, here is Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Good afternoon, everybody. I was talking to my wife earlier, where I live up in the Sacramento area, and I'm in Fresno. And I had to think, because I cover 12 states and I'm out of state a lot of times, I had to think, oh, she's an hour behind me. It was like 12 o'clock. I was like, oh, no, I'm in California. Hello. So, and it's only Thursday. I still have another day to go. I'm so happy to be with you and be with Napa County Farm Bureau members. It's great. Hopefully, if you guys were in Monterey in December, probably saw you in the hallway. There's so many people there. But we're going to be talking a little bit about succession planning today, and I'm going to take a little bit different view of it than I probably normally do. And our presentation is talking about a will, right? Now, will is not necessarily a transition plan. So that's kind of the mode of succession plan that we're going to be looking at today. So I'm going to see if I can get there we go. Our legal eagles have our say so that the slide needs to be in here, and it's basically our legal slide. It says, hey, we're not going to be talking about any products or anything like that, and we're not. We're really talking about the ideas surrounding transitioning a farm and ranch to that next generation. So as Christina said, my name's Tim Cole. I've lived here in California for 6 years now. I've been with Nationwide for 14, and I keep getting moved west. And I started in Kansas City, and I was moved to Utah, and now in California when I took over this role with Land Is Your Legacy. I have 3 grown kids. I've got 2 in Kansas City and 1 in Virginia. So my kids are spread out across the country. My wife and I live in Rockland, if you guys know where that's at, kind of right up I-80 on the way to Tahoe. So really love this program, love being part of the team. I cover 12 states for Nationwide. So I'm Montana down to New Mexico and everything west, but spend a good chunk of my time in California, either with the Farm Bureau or some of our ag lenders in the state of California. So happy to be with you today. I'm going to come back to my contact information at the end, just in case you guys need to contact me for any reason, as we'll talk about as we get going here, but we'll move on from here. So this is our agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about Nationwide, and I won't spend too much time here because if you guys have been around the Farm Bureau for any length of time, you have heard us talk about our connection to agriculture and our start with the Ohio Farm Bureau and how that's kind of morphed into where we are today. But then we'll get really into the typical estate plan, what that looks like, and the cons, we'll say pros and cons of that, what transition planning looks like from a true ideal perspective, and then we'll summarize everything as we go. So hopefully that's okay with you guys. It's just a small group today, so I'm okay. If somebody has a question you want to ask me as we go, that's typically fine too. All right, so why Nationwide, right? Why are we helping farmers and ranchers along the way with, could be property and casualty insurance. Maybe we're insuring your farm. I know on the insurance side, it's a really tough thing in California right now. It's been tough for a number of years. I hope that we're kind of turning the corner there. I don't know what's going to happen with all the fires down south, right? It's going to be a little bit of a disaster from that standpoint. But we've always been there. We're still in California. We're never going to pull out of California. It's been Kurt Walker, our CEO's, been adamant that, hey, we're in California to stay. We want to ensure farms and ranches. At the end of the day, we are a for-profit company, right? So we want to be able to make a profit so that we will be there for those people that we are insuring down the road. But our start, right, goes back almost 100 years, 98 years, 99 years. And we're coming up on our 100th anniversary. Really started by the Farm Bureau in Ohio. We got a loan from them, started Farm Bureau Mutual, is really farmers helping farmers with auto insurance back then. I always like to make this point, it's not on the slide, but in 1935, so 9 years later, is when we got into the financial services side of the business, which is important because, today we have both sides still. We do a lot of business on the financial services side, which is, that's where you find life insurance and 401ks or retirement accounts. Retirement income planning with annuities. You find mutual funds. That's our financial services side of the business. So we've been doing both of them for a very, very long time. And I think we're one of the few large insurance carriers that are still doing both. But as you can see there, we changed the name to Nationwide in the 50s and took over Farmland Insurance in the 80s, which became our agribusiness headquartered in Des Moines, Iowa. And this program that we're talking about, that we'll get into the later part of this presentation, Land Your Legacy, we started about 14 years ago. So the same year I started at Nationwide, we started this program. I don't know if that's good or bad, but the program has been great. We've been helping a lot of farm families along the way in helping them transition their farms and ranches to the next generation. So, I think from written premium, when you look across the country, Nationwide is still the #1 writer of farm and ranch insurance. Even though it's a very, very tough industry right now, we're still the #1 out there when it comes to farms and ranches. So we want to continue, being that go-to provider for our members along the way. So many of you may know this, you may not. I really think this is one of our true secrets out there, and it's the fact that we have 16 board members that run this company, Nationwide. We have, 26,000 people that work at Nationwide. Of those 16, over half of them are active farmers. Jeff Zellers, our current chairman of the board, was at the annual meeting in Monterey. He's an active farmer. The neat thing, I'm connected to Jeff on LinkedIn. And, when you go to his LinkedIn page, it doesn't say anything about being the chairman of the board of a Fortune 100 company, right? It talks about him being the executive of his farm, which is kind of neat. So that is a real true difference maker, I think, when people out there realize that we're a company started by farmers, we're still run by farmers, and we've always had a farmer as our chairman going back, 99 years. So kind of a neat story there, I think. And it's really the why of what we're doing, right? Why are we helping farmers? It's because we're farmers ourselves. We started there. We, continue to help farmers along the way. We've always had that connection to agriculture, and we'll continue that connection going forward. I don't have to spend too much time telling you guys about the state of farming today. You could tell me more than I could tell you. But we do know is that, I think there's been a little bit of a decline in farms across the country. I think the number is like 1.8 million or something like that, family farms. But that current operator continues to get older and older and older. And the only thing I want you to take away here is if you look on the right, that last slide, 1 of 3 families have a transition plan in place. That number is 29%. And I bet you if we really dug deep into that number, we'd probably find that number is actually a lot lower than 29%. I know the USDA sends out a survey every year where you can kind of check a box that you've done succession planning. But I think if we dug deep, we would probably find that there's only probably about 10 to 15% of actual families that have a completed transition plan in place. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today. But So there's, a concern from my standpoint that more families don't have a completed plan in place. And so those family farms and ranches might, end up getting sold down the road. And I don't want to see that. So what we're going to talk a little bit about now is the typical estate plan, right? And why it doesn't necessarily lead good results, or in this case, terrible results. So we're going to talk a little bit about a hypothetical family, and this is a typical estate plan, right? You've got Bill and Sue. They're in their 60s. They are third generation farmers, and they have three kids, right? David, John, and Lucy. Currently, right now, John, their middle child, is the only one that's working on the farm. So they have two non-farm kids. And so what typically happens, right? They're going to say, yep, let's go see our attorney. We need to draw up a will, right? And they love their children dearly and they want to treat them equally, right? So it's basically, hey, it's just a third, a third, and a third. In fact, we had a planning case that came to us a little while ago, and I always have to remember whether it was pre-COVID or post-COVID, but this is basically what they told us, that, hey, we've got, it was mom and dad, they had three kids, and essentially, hey, we just want to treat them all fairly. When we started digging into that case, it was the oldest was the son who was going to take over the operation. The middle child was a daughter who had gone off to school, then med school, and became a dentist and wasn't practicing in that town. And the third was a special needs son, which they hadn't really set up anything for. And so, here you've got these three kids. We're just saying, probably it's not going to work the way that you want to. And we'll actually kind of go through something similar here in our hypothetical. But so typically how this would work, right? So Bill, if he passed away first, right, everything would go to Sue. And when Sue would pass away, then everything would get distributed to the three kids, in this case, in thirds, right? So what happens then to that ownership? So let's say Sue does pass and it goes to the three kids. And now the way to look at this is every acre is owned a third by the children. And so in this case, every acre then can be looked at to be sold or, developed or whatever, right? I mean, so that ownership easily can get divided because at the end of the day, John, who is farming, he has one vote, right? And he has one idea of what that operation should look like. Because when it comes down to it, they might all have different ideas, right? John, he's been farming, he's been working on the farm, he just wants to continue farming. That's what he wants to do, which is terrific. But, David, he might say, hey, why don't we turn this into an organic yak farm? That sounds like a great idea. And Lucy's just like, no, we could, sell this to developers and, make a lot of money, that type of thing, right? So now you've got these competing kids that have different ideas. And in this case, John's kind of get outnumbered when you've got the odd men out, right? So. And then typically, if this was still mom and dad, we would have, Bill and Sue, you've got income that's coming in that might get put back right into the farm, right? For repairs, they need to, put a new roof on the barn or something, right? All new equipment, it's all going to go back into. But when it's divided out, right, you've got that income is now getting sparsed out between three kids. And so sometimes there's not the money left over to put back into the operation. So whether it doesn't happen immediately, over time, what's going to happen is that farm's going to get fractionalized and then it's going to be cease to exist. You guys might have heard me tell the story before, but our program manager, Tim Flager, had one of those type of scenarios that his grandfather had a family farm, it was 100 acres, no, it was 1,000 acres, 100-year-old farm in Kansas, and had that scenario where they had 5 kids, and it was his Uncle Kenny was the one that came back to the family farm when his grandfather passed away to run that farm. And And Kenny gave up college, right? Moved back to the family farm, built his home, and raised his kids on that farm. Well, his mom, in this case, Uncle Kenny's mom, Tim's grandmother, never took the time to put anything other in place other than that "I love you" will. That's what she had, and so she loved them kids so much that they were each going to get a fifth. There was five kids, and so when she passed away, that farm was divided into fifths, right? I mean, it was basically sold because you can't take a combine and divide it into five pieces. So it was all sold. They all got, that 20%. And Uncle Kenny, he didn't even have enough, to farm, right? So the whole thing, that 100-year-old farm got sold out because of lack of planning. So we don't want to see that happen. And that's kind of why we exist today with this program. But you might be saying, "Hey, Tim, don't worry. We've got a will. We saw the attorney, got the will, so that's going to take care of everything." So let's walk through that. So, fortunately for me, I've moved so much that every time we go to a new state, we've got to draft up a new will. And when we first started our will, years ago, our kids were all minors. And so we had to determine, okay, where are they going to go if something happens to us, right? And we basically named my wife's sister as kind of the person that would take over the kids and help raise them. But now they're all grown and married and out of the house, right? So in this case, when Bill and Sue drew up their will, Lucy was a minor. And so their thinking was, well, we'll name the two boys as beneficiaries, and then they can use some of the assets we have, like life insurance or our IRAs or annuities, to help raise Lucy. Well, Lucy's no longer a minor, right? She's now an adult. And so if something were to happen to them, she'd actually get excluded from the assets because of the way that was written, and they never went back and changed it. Right. So that can be one thing that could be disheartening, certainly to Lucy, but to the family in general. The other thing is, ownership. So let's say that Bill passes away and your mom, right? In this case, Sue, she's older and she's like, man, Lucy lives nearby, says, "Lucy, I'd really like some help with my finances and my bank accounts and things like that. Can you help me?" And Lucy's close by. She says, "Sure, Mom, I'll help you with that." And so they go and they open up some bank accounts, joint, right, with rights of survivorship, so that Lucy can help with some of those things. The problem with that is that any of those accounts that are joint with rights of survivorship, when Sue passes away, when Mom passes away in this case, all those accounts are going to go to Lucy, and the boys in this case are going to get cut out, right? So, a lot of these things come into play that sometimes it's kind of collateral damage that you don't think about initially when you put these things together. Well, what else can happen, right? The wills aren't going to change the fact that you might have some contractual obligations. You might have some operating loans with Farm Credit or with a local bank. There's going to be some grain contracts. In this case, there was a loan for 80 acres that Bill and Sue had out on some property that they bought, right? So all these things are going to have to be dealt with as well. After passing at some point in time. Sometimes some of these things need to be paid off. If there's a tax scenario, that needs to be paid off within 9 months of passing, right? So some of these things are going to be outside of that will. They're going to need to be taken care of. So I like to use the term transition plan, but sometimes people will say succession plan, and that's okay too. We like transition because we're really dealing with not only the operation, in this case, the farm or ranch, but also the people side of it. We think that's really important too. It's not just the business, right? But it's the people. And so we think that that planning needs to entail more than just the will or just the trust. So there was Minnesota Extension did this research. They ended up writing up a paper on it. It was called 2021, a good year to write your farm transition plan. So it goes back a few years. But what they found was that 85% farmers, when they did this, had yet to complete their farm transition plans, 85%. So what happens is maybe you're sitting on a Zoom call like this, where we're providing education, or you go to a seminar, right, where some of that information is talked about, and you start that process, but you never finish it. And then you get busy, right? You go back to your daily, you're busy, you're farming, or it's during harvest time or whatever, right? You got other things going on, and you don't circle back around and finish what you started, if you've even started it. I hear of a lot of people that go to these and then they leave and they never really take the action. And so 85%, right? I mean, that's only 15 out of 100 complete them. That's really, really low numbers. Kind of goes back to that number I talked about in the beginning. So the big question is, okay, do you want to be the 85%, or you want to be the 15%? If you're looking, hey, where am I going to be a year from now or 2 years from now? What category do I want to be in, right? I'm sitting here today, say, hey, I want you all to be in that 15% category, at least be making some progress towards that end. And we come across a lot of families that have no estate documents, which sometimes could be better, because we can make suggestions. Hey, here's what you need, starting from scratch, here's what you need. But even if they have some things, we might be able to tweak those and tell them, hey, this is great, but it needs to be updated based on what you would like to see happen. So we just think that transition planning is going to, at the end of the day, have much, much better results for you. It's going to take a look at all those different areas that we think should be covered. So like most small businesses, farms fit right in there, because a farm or ranch is a small business. What really makes success is good management and businesses that are financially sound, right? That's what breeds success more often than not. And that second point, and we see this happen a lot of time, it's that family harmony piece that is so, so crucial. And it's one of the first things that we actually deal with. It's the family, it's the people piece, right? Because if you don't have family harmony, it's going to be a disaster. It's not going to end well. So the three focused key areas that we think are really, really important are people, plan, and tools. So we're going to go through, what does that look like from a people, plan, and tools perspective. When I look at the big picture of what we're doing to help farms and ranches, I love this slide, because this is kind of how I picture it. Now, you might have a financial advisor that you're working with right now. Terrific. They can certainly be a part of this whole process. But when I look at this, and I look at our Land is Your Legacy program, which is our transition planning program, I have professionals that I have trained across the state to help families with this program and this process. And so this is how I view it, that all these professionals are really important to the grand scheme of things, right? You've got your attorney, they're important. You've got your CPA, your ag lender, maybe you're a real estate investor, your financial advisor that might be helping with things that are market driven, right? All these people are important. And I see them sitting at this big boardroom table, right? And the goal of this whole group is to help that family make sure that that transition plan is in place. And you're at the center of that hub, right? Of that wheel. In my view, with the Land is Your Legacy advisor, and he's helping get this plan implemented. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So if you think about that already, let me go back that slide. So if you think about this, kind of think through, hey, do we have an attorney that we like and that maybe he's helped us in the past? Who's our accountant or our CPA that's doing our taxes? They're important. Do I have an ag lender? Do we even have loans? Maybe you don't have loans. Okay, that's okay. Do we have P&C agent that we really like, right? You can kind of think through this. Do we have some of these team members already? If not, start writing these guys down and say, hey, we need to start building our team. It doesn't matter whether it's a business, a corporation, a marriage, right? Communication is the most important thing. I think a lot of times it's just communicating out really what that looks like, transition. I was talking with a farmer one time about this very thing. He's talking about his plan. He goes, "Oh yeah, I've got a plan." He's pointing to his head. "Yeah, I got a plan. It's all up here." We're like, "Well, that's terrific. I'm glad you've kind of thought through that, and it's all up in your head." The problem is, if something were to happen to you, we can't get that information out, right? So it's got to get at least put down or shared with somebody else, or put down on paper so that everybody else knows what you're thinking as well, right? So the communication is really, really important. Being able to share out the items that you'd like to see happen in a constructive manner, and making sure that the whole family's on the same page. At least at the end of the day, if there's only one son or daughter that wants to continue the operation, at least if the other ones know, what's going to happen, that's really, really important. They may not like it, or they may like it, right? But at least they know what's going to happen. And you can kind of work from that standpoint. And quite frankly, part of it is just kind of working through some of those dynamics. So when a family comes to Nationwide and says, "Hey, we would really like your help in putting together our own transition plan," these are the 5 areas that we're really going to do a deep dive on. And we're going to cover pretty much everything, like I said, not only from the business standpoint, but from a personal side. So if you're looking at these 5 items, if you go down to that bottom one on the left where it says succession planning, on this slide, they're not necessarily in any order, but I'm going to take that one first because that's typically the one that we'll deal with first. This is the people piece, right? This is having that honest conversation about the farm and ranch, and what is it going to take to get it from generation A to generation B, or sometimes to generation C, depending on the dynamic. Who's farming with who here, right? Is it 2 brothers? We did a case where there was 4 brothers. They were all married. They all had kids that were involved in the operation, and it was a grower, packer, shipper. It was a very, very large operation, but the whole, all 4 brothers were involved in their kids. So very complicated, very complex in that standpoint. So we want to, deal with that first. Once we deal with the people, then see sometimes the other pieces kind of fall into place. So succession planning is first, and then the business planning piece. Let's look at the business. Okay, this is a sole proprietorship. This is mom and dad. Great. We've got 2 kids that want to carry on the operation. What structure is going to be the best for that operation going forward? And as we talked earlier about the income piece, maybe the operation is providing decent income for mom and dad, but there's 4 kids. If we take that same income and spread that out over 4 families, probably not, right? Depending on the amount of income, maybe, but probably not. So we want to kind of dig into that. The next piece would be risk management. We're Nationwide. We are a risk manager. That's what we do. We're very good at it. And we're really trying to identify, in this case, is there anything here that can blow this thing up, right? Something unexpected that comes out of nowhere. We want to be ready for all those type of scenarios. Something I see that comes up time and time again with our planning cases is healthcare. Farmers and ranchers just don't factor in, what if I become ill or sick? It's not that I've passed away, right? I'm still here, but I can't be out in the field where I would like to be or need to be. And I've got medical expenses that I hadn't planned on, where those are going to come from. So that would be risk management. And then the 4th piece would be financial independence. In this piece, we want to deal with the fact that at some point, the current operator is going to step away from the business, and we want to make sure that they've got the income reserves or assets there to be able to live on the life they want to live. And then the second piece of that really is, it's that mentorship piece where the current operator is mentoring the next generation into that operation. And I'll tell you, I had this conversation with one of my Land Legacy professionals in another state. He was having this very conversation with the farmer, and he said, yeah, the farmer was telling him that his 2 boys were going to take over. They knew everything there was to know about the outside, the land part, right? The planting, the harvest, the equipment, they had that down cold. But what we seeing, what part they didn't know yet was the office side of it, things, right? It's the administrative, it's the accounts payable, accounts receivable, right? So they're having this conversation. Okay, how can we get them to that experience to learn that part of the business? Do we bring them in a day out of the week or a half a day a week, or do we split up those responsibilities that one could take these responsibilities and this one, that type of conversation. So that's kind of what that looks like. Once we've dealt with and answered all the questions of those 4 areas, then to us, it's that estate planning piece, right? Then it's making sure we've got the right documents in place to carry out the goals and wishes that the family would like to see take place, right? And so that's from our, big planning standpoint, that's kind of what we're looking at. And then for us, when you look at the overall process, right, that's kind of what this slide is all about. So I'm going to use that same family that's looking for us for our help. I typically will connect that family with a Lanerger Legacy professional. That professional has already used the program, so they're going to sit down and have a conversation about the operation. What they would like to see happen. When would they like to see that happen? Who's going to be all involved? Talk about those objectives and those goals, those concerns maybe, and then gather some documents from the family, get those to Nationwide. Our team goes to work then, and we put together basically a completed transition plan that's customized for that family. It's very comprehensive. But in that, right, we're going to do a lot of analyzing of the materials that it could send to us and how we can incorporate in those plans going forward. And then we're going to put together the plan, right? All those options together. We get that back into the hands of that Lanerger Legacy professional. And then that professional goes out and sits down with the family and helps them implement that. Not only presents it, but okay, let's help get this thing implemented, right? So it's all right. The first thing we need to do is we need to bring in your attorney because we need some new trust work done. And then, we actually have a step-by-step guide in there to help the family and the professional kind of implement it. Because we know this is not going to get done in a day, right? This might take 6 months, might take 8 months, might take a year to actually get implemented because, not only are we working with your schedules, but we're working with schedules for other professionals, attorneys, CPAs, real estate brokers, property and casualty agents, right? So all these things got to fit in. And sometimes, from a scheduling standpoint, it just takes a little while to get all those lined up. So that's kind of the process from the plan. So we talked about the people, the plan, and then the last thing we want to talk about are the tools. Now, I've got to tell you this story because it's kind of fresh in my mind. So we live in a house that was built in 91. And so we have got 3 redwoods on our property. And I don't know if you guys know anything about redwoods, but if you ever had to try to dig up the grass around a redwood, underneath the grass, it's nothing but roots. Roots. Well, we have a drain tile that runs through my front yard that all the water, when it would rain, would just back up. And I would be bailing water. And so I said, you know what, we need to replace that drain tile because apparently probably with the roots that went through it, and then you add the mud, right? It got where it was packed and nothing could flow through there. So I started the process of digging out the old tube. And as I started, right, I had like a little axe, and this is my front yard, right? A little axe, and of course a shovel, and I couldn't get very far because once you take off the top layer of grass, it's just all roots. I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. I didn't have the right tools, is my point. My neighbor had to do this 6 months earlier and bought like a mini jackhammer type of scenario. Like electric one. And so I went to him and said, hey, can I borrow your jackhammer? It had like a nice flat shovel piece on it. And man, so it took me a whole day to go about 6 feet. I thought it would be a weekend project, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get through this. I had to go about 25 feet. And so I borrowed his tool and was able to finish the whole thing the next day just because I had the right tools in place. So we want to make sure from Nationwide standpoint that we're getting you some right tools in your hands to do the job. one of the things that we have is what we call a transition checklist. And it's 16 questions that help you to start thinking about, hey, what does transition look like for our family? Things like, have you thought how a marriage or divorce would affect the operation? Um, can the family sit around and have a conversation about the operation without heightened emotions, right? I've had so many people laughing, like, there's no way our family could do that. We start talking, we're going to be in fights automatically, right? So it's those type of questions that are thought provoking. They're just yes, no, or doesn't apply, right? So it's not like you're putting this big survey down. But it's a place to start, and it's a tool that kind of helps you just think through the necessary items. And then one of the other tools that we have out there and is in our client guide, and certainly I can get these pieces to Christina and she can pass them on to you guys. But this is like a prioritized ranking piece. Yeah, it's like 20 really important things. But if you sit down and say, what's really, really important for our family? You guys could probably see some of the things on there. It's, pay off debt, reduce income taxes, have a successful transition of the farm or ranch, retire at age X, right? They're important things. And I kind of laugh because, if you were to give this to my wife and you give this to me and we did this separately, our list would probably look different, right? And so then it's having that conversation, okay, let's take our list, put them together. What's really important? And so that's a really important tool too, just to kind of identify, hey, what are those goals that we want to see happen in our transition. And then we do have one, it's called Let the Farm Speak. And this is that where you can do more of an essay type questions, just answering some of those questions about, hey, what would it look like, if so-and-so passed? What would it look like if the other person, and just kind of writing that out, what would happen now? And, at the end of the day, we call it Let the Farm Speak, because if we were to take out everybody's individual needs and wants out of it for a minute and just let the farm speak, who would the farm say they wanted to have the operation continued by, right? And so that's kind of where that's important. That's just, again, we're just thinking through the process of what that looks like. So those are some of the tools that are at your beck and call here to be able to finish a project that maybe you already started, maybe you've thought about it, maybe you haven't gotten very far. Maybe you're one of those families with a will and a trust, but you haven't really thought through those other areas. These are all areas that we can help you with. So I'm doing really good on time. So, essentially, you talked about why Nationwide's doing this, right? We're here to help you. There's so many different ways that we can help you, not only with, most of our Farm Bureau members think of Nationwide just as their farm insurer, right? But we do so much more and we can help in so many other ways. So this is just one way where we can help you, knowing that we've had that connection to agriculture and we'll continue to have that connection to agriculture. If you got the will and the trust, what does that look like? Again, I've moved a number of times. I've had to adjust and make a new will every state I've gone into. So for me, it's been helpful, right? Because I've worked through that as my kids have grown. I don't need somebody now to take care of them, right? If we passed away, right? So it's always been a change. But maybe you did one years ago when your kids were young and you've never changed it. So it's going back through and okay, what does it look like now? And then maybe starting that transition planning process, right? People, plans, tools, and all that comes with that. And so I'm going to go back. Let me go back to my slide with my contact info on it. And you guys can jot it down or here we go. So I would love to open it up, Christina, for if anyone has any questions. The way that I think this is, let's say someone on the call here says, hey, I would love Nationwide's help in this. I put my contact information on the slide there because please call me or email me and I will connect you with a Manage Your Legacy professional. If you guys have let's say a financial advisor and you love them and you love for them to help you, let me know. I would love to talk to them about the program and take them through the training so they know how to utilize the program and know the process and how that all works. But having said that, let's see, I guess there's a all right, so Margaret, you're asking about attorneys. So most of the Landsure Legacy professionals that I utilize have attorneys that they use. So if somebody came to us and said, hey, I really don't like our attorney, that happens sometimes, or this was dad's attorney, it's not really my attorney, I'd like to start fresh with a different attorney, right? A lot of times the Landsure Legacy professional can connect you with an attorney that is more ag specific, right? They know how to write trusts and wills that are more suited for agriculture clients. I would also say that, and I do want to make sure I'm answering your question, but you can go to an attorney. Some attorneys will do this. What we find though is attorneys want to kind of draw up your documents, but they haven't really worked through all the other areas about what that looks like. And so there are some that'll do this. I haven't found a ton of them. I found that that they'll write up the documents, but they're not really covering all the other areas. And so that's kind of where Nationwide's process, right? That boardroom table, right? We're going to factor in all the different areas. Elaine, great question. So for what Nationwide puts together, our plan, what I like to call the blueprint, when we get that into your hands, there's no cost for that. So this is complimentary to the farm family. This is Nationwide going back and say, hey, the board saying, we're not going to charge other families for this. There is a cost to it, but we're absorbing that cost. We're not going to pass that on to the family. And we're not going to, and I've seen plans anywhere from $5,000 to $85,000 that you're paying just to get the plan, right? So I kind of feel like our process, and it's very comprehensive, we're going to save you some dollars on the front end. Now, the cost to you guys, if you go to implement this plan, if you need to get the attorney involved, right, there's a cost there. If you need to get the CPA involved, because we're going to open up an S Corp and separate the land from the equipment, there might be a cost there. If one of the solutions in the implementation process is to open up a trust and fund it, let's say with insurance, there's might be a cost there. One of the reasons why you would do that is because, again, you have one that wants to continue, two kids that don't. Sometimes that tax-free death benefit enables the son or daughter that wants to continue to be able to pay off his siblings, something like that. So there's some cost, but they're probably going to be on the back end. But for us to put together the plan, there won't be any cost there. So, all right, Scott, you've got a question. Let's see.
And just to read the question, Scott says, hold multi-generational properties as TIC. Have you seen the effects of Prop 19 on family transfers after passing?
Yeah, I think, in California, that's something that's still being kind of worked through. I know with the whole Prop 19 thing, which wasn't really going to be good for any family with a successful farm, or even holding some properties, things like that, and that whole step up in basis, that was going to be a problem there. I don't even think that's been settled yet. The last time that I saw, there was all sorts of lawsuits that are still working on that, trying to work through what that looks like. So I don't have a good answer for you on that yet, but I'll go back to our folks. In fact, I'll write that down and see if we can do a little bit more research on that.
Oh, thank you, Tim. It was worth a shot. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody knows, but it's kind of ever looming for
It
older
is.
places,
Yeah, yeah, and that was that like 2 cycles ago, or no, it was
Yeah.
long, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I mean, it was, it passed, right? It was, remember all the propositions is like the Farm Bureau was really focused to get 15, done away with, which we did, right? And then, but 19 squeezed through there, and that had all sorts of other collateral effects. And I just don't think we have a good handle yet on what that's going to look like.
Okay,
So,
appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah, you got it. Any other questions for you guys? This is fun. I do feel like I probably talked too much, so I apologize for that. I know I was going through the presentation, but feel free to reach out to me if you've got some other questions or if you'd like to have a conversation with somebody. There's some, depending on let's see, you guys are all up in Napa County. Yeah, I've got some really good people that can help. So.
We have one more question. How do you work with families that live in different areas to develop a legacy plan? What if the main owner is not cooperative?
So we do work with cooperatives, but we work with a lot that aren't cooperatives. I would say most of the plans that come through our program are not cooperatives. They're family farms like you guys have. Part of my role is to find advisors that would be good fits for Land is Your Legacy. Okay, Elaine, you asked another question. Okay, if they're reluctant to participate, you mean the families? But the owner is not a cooperative. Yeah, if the family's not a cooperative, a lot of so this is the key question, right? Is the owner, right? Do they want to go through that process? They should, based on what we talked about today. If they don't, it's going to be a complete mess. And you have that rare parent that says, I don't care what happens, they can fight over it, I'll be gone, right? Most parents aren't like that. Most parents say, hey, I care what happens to this operation. I took it over from dad. I'm giving it to our kids. I'd like to see this continue, right? They care. So just, regular family farms. I mean, we can help with that. The reluctance part is I could talk to them till they're blue in the face, right? But sometimes if the family members, if the kids are going to them as, hey, what have you put together for succession? The kids are employees at this point in time. Say, Dad, I'm just an employee, but I want to be an owner. I want to own this at some point down the road, right? Can we put something in the plan now so that I can take over ownership at somewhere down the road? And while I'm doing that, you can mentor me, right? Mentor me so that ultimately when I own it, and maybe you step away, I've got full, ownership of the program. It's a tough piece of this because everyone's got to be on the same page, and that's why we kind of start with some of those tools. And you might hear this today, but you might, your family might not be ready for 6 months from now, right? Because it just takes a little bit of time to kind of get everybody on the same page and moving forward. It's almost odd to find that family that, oh yeah, this is great, let's do it, right? And they're on top of it. Most of them are, most farmers that keep things close to the vest. They don't really want to share what's going on. And, so it's a little bit tougher. I do have a couple planners in your area, some that are very, very good. There's one in particular that I've connected with a number of Farm Bureau families. And there's another one up there, but he just lost his wife. So I would tend to not give him some space for a while. But for sure, yeah, I can get you a name of somebody you can call and let them know that you were on the seminar today and you'd like to have a conversation about transition for sure. Yeah, I can give his name. I'll send the name to Christina. She can get it out to you guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tim. This has been such a wonderful seminar. It's been full of so much fantastic information for all of our members, and we really appreciate it. Again, Tim's contact information is on the screen right now. And of course, we're always here at the office to help you at the Napa Farm Bureau. Each day we try to provide protection for agriculture and continue the legacy. So thank you, Tim, so much. We appreciate you, and thank you, members, for joining us today. Have a wonderful.
Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Tim. That was exactly what we needed to learn from you.
Oh, awesome.
So thank you.
I'll get that information to Christina. She'll get it out to you guys.
Okay, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Bye.
great day.